Hi guys, welcome back. This is Telltale. I'm Emily.
I'm Greg.
And today we are going to be reviewing Deathworld. Deathworld number 1 in particular. So I'm going to let Greg give you the background of this one.
Yes, we read the first book. It is a trilogy. There are three books, but they're basically three separate stories about the same character. Very, very clever titles. Deathworld 1, Deathworld 2, and Deathworld 3.
So original.
Yeah, imagine coming up with that. But Harry Harrison he's no longer with us. He was a great science fiction author. You would know him best from his novel Make Room, Make Room, which was filmed as Soylent Green. So the famous phrase, Soylent Green is people, that's Harry Harrison. He came up with that. And most of the rest of his fiction was not like Soylent Green. He mostly wrote space operas. Really good, really fun space operas. And Deathworld is one of those. It was published in 1960, originally serialized in Analog magazine, edited by John Campbell Jr. And I'll let you take it from there in synopsis.
All right, so the synopsis is our main character,
Jason.
I knew it was the J name. See, I read this a few weeks ago, so I've already 6 books after this by now. So Jason is a professional gambler. He gets approached by this really scary, big, meathead-looking guy saying, hey, we need a shit ton of money, and we need it fast. Can you get it? He's like, heck yeah, I can. He's psychic, by the way. So he's really good at winning at gambling houses and casinos and stuff. So he's on this planet. That's a gambling planet, basically. It's basically the Las Vegas of all planets. He goes in there, kind of plays with the casino a little bit to make it look like he's not going to win, but then he might, kind of messing with them. Senses that there's a little hostility, so he wins the money, he goes and cashes out, and basically he and this big guy have to flee right away because Casino Mafia is after him for winning. So he's on the ship with this guy, and the guy's like, the reason we needed that money is because we need weapons. Because I live on a planet that everything that moves, lives, and breathes is trying to kill you. Very violently. You have a great quote, actually. I'm going to let you
Yes, my quote from the book. Armor-plated, poisonous, claw-tipped, and fang-mouthed. That describes everything that walks, flaps, or just sits and grows. Ever see a plant with teeth that bite? I don't think you want to. You'd have to be on Pyrus, and that means you would be dead within seconds of leaving the ship.
So the reason that this culture is on Pyrus is because that's the planet's name, Pyrus. It's nicknamed Deathworld. Yeah. But they're on there because there is a very precious, superior metal that they can mine on this planet. So basically, they're risking their lives for the sake of commerce. And they are so kind of brainwashed into this culture and this mentality because of this planet that they really don't function outside of the planet well. They have no manners. They're really kind of cut dry, not very deep and thoughtful people. They're really blunt, totally focused on survival, zero relationship or attachment really to other beings, including each other. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting because our main character kind of has a romance with one of the only female that's really mentioned in this book on the ship. And then when they get to the planet, she just cold shoulders him because her focus and only focus is to survive. When she's on the ship, she can relax a little bit and has developed more of a personality than a lot of the others on the planet has because she can get off of it sometimes. But for the most part, she gets back on the planet and she's just stone cold meathead, just like everybody else, because they have to be. So basically, because our main character is kind of getting bored with gambling, and now he's super wealthy because he got a good cut from what he won at the casino, he's like, what's left for me is to try and die or survive on a planet that's trying to kill me. So he convinces these people to let him come with them. So they get on the planet. He's basically shoved in a class with a bunch of 5-year-olds with guns. And he's like, well, this is weird. At a certain point, he graduates, but his bodyguard is an 8-year-old. And, one of his trainers is an 8-year-old. His bodyguard is a 7-year-old kid. Mm-hmm. when he finally like gets out of the training building that he was basically locked in. So as he's kind of like accumulating an understanding of this violent culture that's dealing with this violent world, he starts thinking like, there has to be, something started this. Like, there has to be a history of why this is like this. There has to be a history as to, you know, first it started as there's these parts of the city that are no longer used. So he's like, there had to be reasons for those. So he starts looking into the history. Realizes that there's actually a culture that lives out in the wild of humans that used to be part of the culture there. So he goes out and he decides, I'm going to break out of here and go check out these people. And he finally figures out, between being psychic and kind of feeling nature around him and interacting with this other tribe of people, that the reason that there is this violence towards the city, where these other people are fighting basically this war with this planet, is because the planet sees them as a threat. It's kind of like white blood cells around a virus. They're seeing this set of humans over here keep perpetuating more violence, so we're just gonna try and fight them. Because they basically came to this planet with a kill it because it's different kind of thing, or kill it because it has sharp things, or, you know, they kind of came in with that mentality that they had to conquer things, so then the Earth is trying to conquer them back. But this other tribe can interact with the animals just fine, and not have as many issues because they're not seen as a threat. So basically there's this whole battle between this tribe. He encourages this tribe to start fighting against the city to take back the spaceship, because the spaceship is basically what's dividing them. These guys have it, these guys don't. And the guys who have it have the resources because they can get off the planet. So he basically kind of fights them against each other and then starts to introduce this other violent culture to the fact that it is their violence that is perpetuating more violence. So that's kind of how the story leaves it, where he's like, well, now you guys got to figure it out. Because, like, this planet is going to kill you if you keep trying to kill it. So the hatred you're kind of giving towards this planet, because the planet ends up being kind of empathy-based, or, like, psychic empathy-based planet. The hatred these people feel towards them make them agitated to hate back. So now he's like, you guys have to change your mindset, because otherwise this planet will kill you. You will die off. They will pick you off one by one until there's nothing left of you. And you can't populate the planet anymore. So it was a really interesting read for all the drama it had.
Yeah, it was a short book, only 150 pages. It was a very easy read. But it's one of the earlier examples of really good world building in science fiction, where he imagined this whole ecology of this planet where everything can kill you. You can't even just drink the water or breathe the air, because there will be microorganisms in it that'll spread quickly and eat you alive. Very fascinating ecology that he built for this whole world.
It was, and it's beautifully described too. It's not just like, oh, this thing with tentacles. It's like, this thing had vine-like tentacles with all these claws. Like, he kind of like tells you, interspaced within 2 inches of each other. Like, it's pretty detailed. But not so detailed that your imagination can't take over either. So authors who can do that is really, really awesome. I also want to talk about the cover of this thing. It is so awesome. One of the things, so we kind of were discussing this earlier together, that Milton Glaser just recently passed away. And we can't talk about design of anything without talking about Milton Glaser. Especially when we talk about the 60s. So what we had been remarking earlier about, look at this beautiful typography. Isn't that great? Look at that font. Reminds me, though, of Milton Glaser's, a lot of the organic curves and color schemes he used on the Bob Dylan poster and album. So we had talked about that a little bit earlier, and just seeing that influence, especially in light of his passing.
Yesterday as we film.
Yeah, yesterday as we film, Milton Glaser passed away. For those of you who don't know who Milton Glaser is and are not involved in the graphic design world, I Heart New York. He designed that. Didn't he do, like, IBM?
No, that was Paul Rand.
No, that was Paul, Paul Bass. my brain. Making connection.
He
But
did
anyway.
a lot of very important corporate identities and posters, and he was one of the founders of Pushpin Studios with Seymour Chwast back in the 1960s, was heavily influential in the growth of graphic design and industry through the 70s and 80s.
And we definitely, you see a lot of things that kind of speak to that as well in this book cover. Who is this?
Richard Corbin did the illustration. I don't know who did the typography.
Yeah, but it's beautifully done. The color schemes are great, and it just kind of reminded me of the Bob Dylan poster, and I wanted to mention, since we are also graphic designers, the passing of Milton Glaser and the influence he had on basically graphic design as we know it. You'll see bits and pieces of it absolutely everywhere. So I kind of had made that connection. Greg had made that connection as well, so we wanted to bring that up and make sure people knew that it's a big influential thing.
And the other observation I have about Deathworld, reading this for the second time, the first time I read it was way back in the 1970s. Reading this novel, it reminded me a lot of Starship Troopers. And I felt Deathworld would make an absolutely awesome science fiction movie right now. Very much in that Starship Troopers vein. Because there's a lot of that, where in Starship Troopers the bugs are just completely dead set on destroying all humans, and you got that same kind of mindset in the ecology of the world Pyrus. So it would be a very similar story. Yes, there's a lot of battles with the wildlife that are just insane, people dying and things being torn apart. It would be a great movie. A lot of very cool visuals, very imaginative descriptions of the life forms in this book.
And what I thought was interesting too is for, like, in the 60s especially, they were talking about, one, I love that you made that connection. So one of the things that I thought of too, like in that time period, is the relationship to fascism. So Starship Troopers especially, they were actually part of a fascist culture, the humans were. So it's very interesting to kind of see how similar this is in relationship to that too. Like, the city has one leader. Technically, nobody rules anything, but it's very obvious that everybody's so hell-bent on surviving. They kind of just chose a point person and do whatever he says. So it's almost a fascist dictatorship combined with the brainwashing because of what the environment they're in, and not having very deep thoughts and not thinking very critically of things. They don't have a chance.
And nobody bothering to question their situation or come up with any other solutions or answers.
Yes. And the other thing I really enjoyed about this book is, because it's from the 60s, psychedelics were hugely experimental, including their relationship to psychic abilities, especially in the military. So one of the things I think is interesting is how they kind of took that piece of their time and put this psychic person who can interact with this psychic environment, only to find out this other tribe has this psychic ability to live in harmony with this psychic environment. I thought that was very interesting and relevant for its time.
Well, and the whole idea of living in harmony with nature was very big among
hippie, crunchy hippie, just
hippie
like
communes of the time.
Yeah, it's really interesting though, and it's cool because the city was very urban, concrete, and the culture that was living in nature was agricultural primarily, and you needed this outsider to kind of come in and realize, you guys need to be friends.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot survive unless you are together and appreciate each other's differences. Like, yes, these guys have resources, but you can work the planet. They wouldn't have to get as many resources if they could work the planet and weren't always trying to fight it.
Right.
So I thought that was really interesting interaction as well, to have, like, third-person perspective come in and just be like, all right, now y'all got to figure it out. But you'll die.
There's a lot of parallels between this and Starship Troopers. The two novels were written about that same time. This was 1960. I think Starship Troopers was right around that same time, 60 or 61. The Cold War was in full swing at that time. A lot of tensions between the United States and Russia. We had just come through all the McCarthyism and the paranoia of worrying about people being communists and trying to take over the nation, and a lot of those themes run through both novels.
It's kind of a very us versus them, but nobody's everybody feels like they're walking on eggshells, but nobody knows for sure.
Mm-hmm.
They're not really thinking deeply about it either. They're just like, this is the way it is. And it's interesting how it kind of prevents progress.
Mm-hmm.
So it is also interesting to have war prevent progress, because usually we think differently. Like I've noticed in most of our technological advances happen on Earth because of wars. Here it's the opposite. They can't advance because they have to survive because they're always at war with their environment. I thought that was a very interesting way to play that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a really great read, really fun adventure, like action after action after action. It's very quick paced. It's not a very large book, so it's a fun, fast, very attention grabbing read. I really enjoyed it. Plus, it's pretty clean. Like kids can read this, and it wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, and that's true with most science fiction back then. Pretty much all of it could be called young adult because it didn't get into stuff that your parents would not want you reading. There wasn't a lot of sex. There wasn't. The violence was pretty clean.
And it wasn't like person versus person violence either. Like a lot of the violence isn't against other humans. In this case, it's more primal beings or animal beings, which feels a lot nicer.
Yeah, so
a little more mild.
It's definitely an easy, fun read. A good entertainment for when you want to get away from all the more deep, serious stuff.
Yeah, it's good to balance out your high literature with your just really fun pleasure reads. So I liked this one a lot. I love that book cover. Can't get over it. It's just so great. But yeah, so anything else?
That's it.
All right. Well, thanks, guys, for joining us. We will see you next time. Like, subscribe, comment, do your thing. See you later.